Huge day, of course, for the UK, so there's kind of perfect timing. Let's start with the morning's news. Court ruling that in order to continue with the Brexit process, Theresa May has to get a vote from Parliament, that the referendum itself is not enough. How significant is this in your view, and could it change the, I don't see too many people thinking that it could actually prevent the triggering of Article 50, but could it change, say, the complexion of the negotiations in some way?
Well, it could, Joe. In fact, it's not over yet because obviously this is going to be appealed.
Right. To the Supreme Court.
To the Supreme Court in the United Kingdom. And their hearing for that, or the result of that, is expected to be heard around the first week of December. So obviously the Supreme Court could, because it'll have a different brief and it'll be looking at other kind of legal ramifications, they may actually overturn this decision. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think the significance is not that Parliament will vote to stop the Brexit process. Right. I mean, there's a lot of wild expectation amongst wilder members of the community that's what this means, which it doesn't. But of course, it's quite significant to the extent that it might mean, and the suggestion is that it means that Parliament will have a stronger role in opining and listening to evidence and defining, framing the terms of the negotiations. In other words, this is a tussle, this is a constitutional tussle between the executive, which is the government, and the Parliament, which is the legislature, which at the moment, obviously, the court has ruled in favour of the legislature, which, a lot of people think is a good thing.
So does that mean that Parliament will then play a role in crafting what a post-EU UK will look like, whereas before the ruling, it didn't have much of a say? It
could, because actually the government basically had said previously that, of course, Parliament would have a role, but at the end of the process. In other words, once the government had decided what the terms would be. This, a lot of parliamentarians found unacceptable. And so if this ruling is upheld, it means that Parliament does get a say in framing the debate right at the very beginning, and that's quite important.
But so, we hear this term hard Brexit a lot, as if there's some other kind of Brexit that's not a hard Brexit. There do seem to be some bright lines, this idea that you can't just pick and choose the good parts of the EU that you like. You can't be a quasi-member if you don't want to have the free flow of labor. The free flow of labor, immigration, a huge reason why Leave won, arguably. Is there such thing as a non-hard Brexit?
Well, some people, including the president of the European Council, Donald Tusk, basically says there's either hard Brexit or there's no Brexit, and there's no ground in between. The role that Parliament might take, if it's allowed to have this role, would be possibly to impose some conditions or to sort of frame the government's, help the government frame its position in such a way that we might end up with an arrangement like, I'm not saying it's going to be like the Swiss or the Norwegians have, but it's a kind of it's remaining in the single market with restrictions on the movement of labour that don't contravene EU regulations, but may make it harder for people to come to the United Kingdom. There are fudged ways of doing this. Yeah, I think the risk is, most people feel that the risk is that a hard Brexit is basically the government stumbling into a fumbled negotiation and ending up with nothing. Today, obviously, the pound has gone up, as you showed in your package, which I think it's more kind of knee-jerk that the process will be delayed. So if this ruling is upheld in the Supreme Court, Theresa May will not be issuing Article 50, which is the exit negotiations, by March. This will be a delaying tactic. And I think the market is just saying, small sigh of relief.
Small sigh of relief. Now, how does this fold in or complicate Mark Carney? Because he has just agreed to stay on as the Bank of England governor for an additional 2 years, not the full 8-year term, but now 7 years. But if the Brexit negotiations are going to be delayed, does that mean that he has to stay until 2019? I
don't think so. And obviously, he'll have his personal reasons why he might want to leave when he said he wants to leave.
Wouldn't that be disruptive?
Well, It would have been disruptive if he'd felt that he'd had no choice but to resign right now, which is, you know, I mean, there has been a bit of a vendetta from certain politicians to try to get him to do that. That would have been very damaging, I think. But I think that, I mean, he said that he would stay on to the point really where, you know, the negotiations will be relatively well advanced, one imagines, unless there's a complete breakdown. But of course, you know, this, I mean, potentially the negotiations could go on for 10 years. I mean, we could find ourselves with an interim arrangement. So there isn't going to be a hard Brexit, but there'll be a stopgap arrangement, and we'll figure out in 10 years what it's going to look like.